I'm getting ready to make a little mac and cheese here, and I thought that tonight I would add broccoli to that, just to give it a little more flavor. I have here in my pan 2 tablespoonfuls of butter, and to that I'm adding half a cup of chopped onions. And I'm going to let them cook there just until they begin to kind of sweat down just a little bit. You only have to let the onions cook until they just begin to soften. And to that I'm going to add 1 cup of broccoli. I cut more than I needed there, but that's extra. I can use that later on for something else. And I'm just going to kind of move that around so that I'm getting it covered with the butter. Mix the onions in. And then I will set that aside. I have here 1.5 cups of milk. And I'm going to add 2 tablespoonfuls of flour. Now when you're adding flour or cornstarch, you want to be sure that you add that while your liquid is still cold, because it mixes up a little easier than it does once it gets hot. It breaks down pretty fast once it's hot, and you've kind of got a mess on your hands. And I'm just going to stir that. And it's all blended in, and I'm going to wait until this gets nice, bubbly, and hot, and then I'll add my cheese. It doesn't take long before the milk begins to thicken. And as you can see, it's kind of like a thin pudding. This, if I added sugar to it, would be kind of like a thin white sauce. I'm going to put 4 ounces of Velveeta cheese. And I like using Velveeta when I make mac and cheese just because it cooks down and is really thin. It makes your stuff creamy. And then I add extra cheese that I've shredded later on. Okay, my cheese has melted down pretty good. You need to stir this constantly because on the heat, if you don't, it will stick to the bottom and then it's burnt. And you won't like the taste of burnt. To this cheese mixture, I'm going to add the onion and the broccoli. And of course that has just a little butter in the bottom. That makes it nice and yummy. I have already cooked my macaroni according to the instructions on the box. And I have here about 4 cups of macaroni that I'm going to just stir into that cheesy mixture. Now if your macaroni cools a little bit after you've drained it, just chop that up, it will straighten right out. Okay, that looks nice and creamy. And you could actually eat it right now just like it is if you wanted. But we're going to put it in this dish. Kind of spread that out so it'll be a little more even. And then I'm going to take, I have here half a cup of whipping cream. And I'm just going to pour that over the top. The reason I didn't put the whipping cream in when I did the rest of the milk is whipping cream doesn't do well when it gets really hot. So we're just adding that. That helps add just a little more richness. And if you don't want it, you can leave that off. I have here 1 cup of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. And I'm just going to kind of scatter that over the top. We don't even need a really thick layer But this adds just a little more flavor to that Velveeta cheese. Gives it a little pop because sharp cheddar is pretty tasty. Okay. And to that, I have breadcrumbs. And these breadcrumbs that I'm putting on, they're Italian style, so they are seasoned. And you can see they already have the seasoning on there. I'm just going to sprinkle those on the top. I don't want it real thick because there is quite a bit of flavor in those crumbs. Depending on the size of your dish is going to depend on how many of these crumbs you use. I probably used, maybe 2/3 cup there. All right, now I'm going to put it in an oven, 350 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. Just long enough for the cheese to melt and the crumbs to get a little crispy. Okay, it has been 25 minutes. Oh, and that's nice and bubbly. Set that out. We need to let that cool about 5 minutes before we dip into it. Okay, the longer you let this set, the more solid it gets. Just gonna dip up a nice big helping. Put right there on the plate. Enjoy.